15 years with Henry. Now Lauren's begging in tears. Can betrayal ever be forgiven? The porch light's soft golden glow lit the yard, immaculately kept. The flower beds alive with color. To a passerby, it looked like every happy family home on the block. But inside, it was all coming apart. His heart raced, and thoughts of the truth unraveled in his mind. Lauren, his wife for 15 years now, had betrayed him. He had found her affair with a man called Douglas through a series of text messages that seemed like daggers piercing his heart. The laughter they shared, the intimacy once there, was now a distant memory. Overshadowed by deceit and betrayal, Henry had parked down the street, giving himself a moment to gather his thoughts. Weeks he had spent gathering evidence, piecing together the fragments of their crumbling marriage. The late-night work meetings, the sudden disappearances, that smile at her phone, all had pointed to something so sinister. Now, with the truth on his side, he was ready to confront her. He took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The cool night air hit him as he walked towards the front door. A slight murmur of laughter filtered out into the yard, a gross contrast to his turmoil. That smell of home hit him as he came in, cooked food, fresh leftover traces of laundry detergent, and something sweet from the kitchen. There were the kids, Zachary and Kelly, sitting at the table making Christmas cookies, while Lauren stood beside them, her face beaming. "Hey, Dad," Kelly exclaimed with her face aglow. "Look at the cookies we made." Henry forced a smile, though his heart was heavy. "They look great, sweetheart." Zachary looked up from the table, now in college and home for the holidays. "Hey, Dad, want to help us? We're making a mess over here." "All right," Henry replied, joining them at the table, although he tried to push his thoughts aside, if only for that moment. They made cookie decorations. The room was filled with chirps of laughter, although it seemed stretched. Henry could hardly concentrate on frosting or sprinkles. Everything he could find was the pending battle between him and Stephen. That evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Henry was left in the living room with Lauren. The festive lights glowed, but the atmosphere felt anything but jolly. He could feel tension hanging in the air, as thick as fog, and refusing to lift. "Lauren, can we talk?" he finally said, firm, yet his voice laced with emotion. She looked up, her face flickering in surprise. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Henry took a deep breath, screwing up his courage. "I know about Douglas." Lauren's face changed, her eyes wide with disbelief. "What are you talking about?" The text, the late nights out, the lies to cover it, I've seen it all," he accused, his voice rising. You've been having an affair behind my back, Lauren." A thick, heavy silence fell between them. Lauren opened her mouth to speak, but closed it, her face a picture of shock and guilt. "Henry, Don't," he cut in. "Just don't. I want to hear the truth." Tears brimming in her eyes, Lauren stepped backward, slumping. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," Henry said, his voice cracking. "You chose to betray me after all that we have been through." "I was lonely, Henry," she cried, her voice shaking. "You were always working, and I felt like I was doing everything alone. I could handle it, but then I met him, and everything changed." Henry felt the anger and sorrow welling up inside him. "So you thought the answer was to sleep with another man? You didn't even think to talk to me?" "I know. I was wrong," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "I was foolish. I could fix things without bringing you into it. But I love you, Henry. I never stopped loving you." He shook his head in a wave of disbelief. "You don't love someone and then betray them like that." "I'm so sorry," Lauren pleaded, stepping closer. "I never meant for this to happen. I want to make it right." Henry's heart broke into a million pieces as he said, "You can't just mend this with an apology, Lauren. The trust between us is broken." A silence enveloped them, the weight of real life weighing heavily in the room. Henry backward, his heart aching from the thought that their marriage hung upon a thread. The days followed were a blur of courts of law, tears, and bitter outbreaks. Henry spent hours poring over divorce laws and meeting his lawyer, Christina, reputably, hard but just. Every meeting counted down to the inevitable, while the pain of this betrayal kept gnawing at him. Lauren tried reaching out, sending messages full of apologies and pleading for forgiveness, while Henry was standoffish. He did not want to engage in any conversations that would hurt him further. Teary-eyed, he had thought about their past love, the dreams they had built, and how fast it all came undone. One evening, Henry sat at the kitchen table, reviewing a pile of papers. Kelly came in, her eyes wide with curiosity, and said, "Dad, what's wrong?" He looked up, startled by her question. "Nothing, sweetheart, just working on some things." Kelly narrowed her eyes and could feel the tension. "You and Mom have been acting weird. Is everything okay?" Henry sighed, realizing he could no longer protect her from the truth. Your mom and I, well, we're having some rough times, but I want you to know it's not your fault." She bit her lip, looking concerned. "But I don't want you guys to break up. I want us to be a family." Henry's heart ached as she spoke. "I know, baby, and I want that too. But sometimes people make choices that get in the way of that. We're trying to figure things out." Kelly nodded, but he could tell she was still disappointed. "Okay, but I don't want things to change." "Neither do I," Henry said softly, pulling her into a hug. "I promise, we'll get through this together." The divorce started to get into gear, and tensions began to rise around the house. Finally, when Zachary left for college, Henry and Kelly were left to their own devices to sort out the emotional mess. Lauren would text Henry every so often, to which he kept his responses short and emotionless. One evening, Henry was fixing dinner when the doorbell rang. He opened the door to find Lauren standing in the doorway, looking fragile and uncertain. Her hair was pulled back into a sloppy knot, and her eyes were red from crying. "Henry, can we talk?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He felt resistance, but after a while, he nodded and stepped aside to let her in. "Fine, but this isn't going to change anything." "I know," Lauren said, her voice shaking, "but I need you to hear me out." They retreated into the living room, the silence hanging between them like fog. Lauren sat on the couch, her hands clasped together in her lap. "I am sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you or your kids. I could have done better." Henry folded his arms over his chest, feeling the familiar ire build in his stomach. "You say that, yet it does nothing to change what you have done. You have chosen him over us." "I know, and it is something that I am sorry for daily," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I know to expect forgiveness overnight to be a lot to ask, but all I ask is that I get one chance to explain." "Go ahead," he told her coldly. "I had such a lonely feeling," Lauren said, her voice cracking. "You were always working, and I didn't know how to cope. I could find comfort somewhere else, but it was a mistake. Douglas was different from what I wanted. I miss you, Henry." He could feel the pain in her eyes and the sincerity of her regret, yet he felt the walls built around him solidify. "You don't get to come back after what you've done. It doesn't work that way." "I know," she said, her voice full of despair, "but I want to be there for the kids. I want to make things right with them." Her words tore at Henry's heart, but the weight of her betrayal fell upon him. "You have to earn that back, Lauren. Trust doesn't come easy once someone has pulled the stunt you have." Lauren nodded, sniffling away her tears. "I understand. I'm ready to do whatever it takes." "Then show it," he said, his voice firm. "Be there for them, be honest, and prove to them over again that you can be trusted. But I'm not going to forgive this overnight either." Lauren nodded, a somber expression on her face. "I will try. I love the kids and want to be a part of their lives." As the weeks went by, Lauren began to try. She made Kelly's soccer games, helped with homework, and sent sweet messages to the kids. Slowly, Kelly started doing things with her again. Henry could see the tentative rebuilding, one filled with cautious hope. But for Henry, the process was more complicated. He felt anger and confusion as Lauren made her way back into their lives, and he didn't know how to reconcile his feelings for her with the hurt she had caused all of them. That night, while Henry was tucking Kelly into bed, her face turned to his with that thinking look. "Dad, could we all go on a trip together? You know, together?" And this did catch him somewhat off guard. "You mean with your mom?" "Yeah," she said, animated. "I think that would be great fun. We could go to the beach like we used to?" Henry sighed heavily and doubted it. A family vacation was a monumental leap. "I don't know, Kelly. It's complicated." "Please, I miss the way it used to be," she said wistfully, a whine lacing her voice while a wide-eyed yearning stared back into him. He looked into her eyes, recognizing the quiet sadness and longing within them. "I'll think about it," he promised. Henry was detached and preoccupied the next day, as he tried to rebuild some semblance of normalcy with the kids for weeks. He also grappled with reality, the truth about him and Lauren. Was this whole trip business really possible? Could they be a family again? He finally called Lauren. "Can we talk?" he said when she answered. "Of course," her voice said, full of hope. They met at a local coffee shop, the familiar scent of roasted beans wafting through the air. Henry watched as Lauren walked in. Her face was alight with anticipation, but he kept himself guarded, not wanting to show too much vulnerability. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sitting across from him. "Kelly wants to take a trip," Henry said, getting directly to the point. "A family trip, to the beach." Lauren's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Really? That sounds amazing." "But," he said, raising his hand to restrain her, "it will take a lot for me to agree to this. You must prove that you are committed to rebuilding our family." "I know," she said, her face solemn. "Whatever it takes, I will do. I want to be there with the children. I miss them so much." He had been hopeful since she spoke thus, but guarded. "It will not be that easy, Lauren. First, the bridges of trust need to be rebuilt, which is also with just you showing up in their lives." "I can do that," she promised. "I want to make it right. I want to be a part of their lives again." Henry nodded, the seriousness of the moment weighing heavy. "All right then, we'll plan this trip, but it's my way." As the time approached, Henry felt excited and nervous all at once. They arranged everything, including the tiniest details, and picked a beach house, that would give them space, yet allow them to be with each other. It finally arrived. As they packed the car, Kelly bounced excitedly, the energy catching. Henry tried shaking the nerves away, reminding himself it was for her. The car was full of laughter on the way to the beach, with road games and everyone singing to the radio. Henry turned and saw Lauren crease into a smile and interact with Kelly, which momentarily fanned a flame of hope within him. The view hit them as they finally reached the beach house. The sun had already begun to dip into the horizon, casting an amber shade on both sand and sea. Henry watched her run to the shore as Kelly laughed into the salty air. Then, over the next few days, a spate of activities was engaged: building sandcastles, swimming in the ocean, and even trying surfing. The broken pieces of the family breaks started to heal as there was much fun in the air. But deep inside, Henry knew the truth of it all. He couldn't hide that ache that still lingered deep inside him. As glad as he was that the kids were getting attached to her, he couldn't shake off those memories of betrayal. It sat one evening around the bonfire, roasting marshmallows and telling stories. Henry turned to Lauren, who was smiling at something Kelly had said. It was genuine laughter. For that moment, he saw inklings of the woman he had fallen in love with, who brought so much joy into his life. Then, as if in an avalanche, the memories hit him: the hurt, the betrayal, the deceit. He felt the walls he had set up around his heart begin to reconstruct themselves in preparation for the battle against forgiveness. Later, after the kids had gone to bed, Lauren came out and joined him in the firelight. "Hey," she whispered, lowering herself onto the seat beside him. "Can we talk?" "Yeah," Henry replied with caution in his tone. "Thank you for bringing us here. It means much to me," she said, her eyes delving into his. "I'm glad the kids are happy," he replied, looking away. Lauren sighed, her shoulders sagging. "I know it's still hard for you. I know I've hurt you and I can't change that. But I want to make things right, whatever it takes." Henry looked into her. The vulnerability in her eyes sent a chord through his body. "I want to believe you, but it's hard. Trust doesn't just come after everything so easily." "I understand," she repeated, shaking, "but I want to regain that trust. I want to show you I'm committed to our family." Now, a spark lit in Henry's heart between the fire crackles. They could rebuild their family. Still, that would be a lengthy, problematic procedure. Nothing would happen overnight or without endless patience. The journey was a blur, as laughter and love were everywhere. Henry watched Kelly and Lauren grow closer. Seemed as if their bond developed strength with each new experience they shared. It filled him with relief as his daughter returned to her mother. On the ride home, Kelly slept in the back seat, utterly exhausted after all the fun days in the sun at the beach. Lauren and Henry exchanged a look. Unspoken words passed between them. "Thanks for this," Lauren said quietly, the first to speak. "It was everything I hoped for." Henry nodded, weighing their journey ahead. "We still have a long way to go, but it's a start." "Just give me time," Lauren pleaded with a plaintive appeal. "I want a chance to prove I can be the wife and mother you deserve." "Time," Henry repeated, knowing it was the big word in their recoming lives. "Let's take one day at a time." With every mile they drove into the setting sun, a spark of hope ignited inside him. A hard road lay ahead, but together they might make a way, step at a time. The road to healing would be long, filled with many obstacles, but Henry knew. He glanced at his family, who were all smiling back. They were better together. Time might restore the bond of trust again, and love and patience hammer out a new beginning. Sometimes life doesn't provide neat ends, but new beginnings. Growing, loving, and showing redemption through shards of shattered vows. And together they find their way back toward each other, one day at a time.